Hey, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. A couple things about this episode. First off, it's an incredible conversation with David Aardsma, who played for a bunch of major league teams. He was actually in the Blue Jays front office for a little while. He's worked in baseball media for a while. Now he also works in performance. He has a performance institute based in Arizona. Really diverse set of skills and knowledge from David Aardsma. Also a guy who I enjoy everything that he tweets, everything that he puts out about baseball, because frankly, it comes off as authentic and not towing any company's line. So I really loved our conversation. I got to tell you one thing about it. I was in a hotel room in Washington, D.C., and it was my first time using this mobile setup, and my mic is blown out. Now, I've brought it down to a point where I think it's listenable, and I think the conversation is good enough to warrant it, but I'm pissed. I was angry. I was angry at myself. I tried to sound check. No one cares about this. Anyway, it's still worth listening to, but I want you to know, I just want to acknowledge to you that I know that it doesn't sound incredible on my side. David Aardsma still sounds great. He talks for the most of it, which is preferable anyway. So please enjoy this conversation, but know that I'm ashamed of my side of this for that one reason. All right, please enjoy. All right, so David Aardsma of MLB Network Radio, Top Velocity Pro, ESPN, former big leaguer. Thank you for coming on. I'm having you on today. I want to talk about the CBA negotiations between the owners and the players. And the reason, by the way, not that you're the foremost expert on it, but everything you say online about stuff like this makes me know that it's your actual opinion. And you're not trying to appease anyone or to make anyone happy with the way that you're talking about it on the internet.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate
does that
it.
ever get you in trouble? Because you work for Major League Baseball, so there's maybe part of. Is there any code of conduct where they're like, "Shut up about this"? The negotiations are tense.
Well, when I'm on MLB Network, you have to be careful what you talk about because that is Major League Baseball putting that together, and so you can talk about it. You can have opinions about it. Everyone knows the reason you're on there is you want a player's opinion. Like I was a player for years, and then I was in the front office for 3 years. So I've both. Obviously, when you're in the front office, unless you're the GM or assistant GM and president, you're not really dealing with the CBA or care about the CBA too often. I'm in player development, so they don't really care about that. But the idea, you have to be smart about what you say. You can talk about it in very clear terms. But a lot of times on MLB Network, you're just making sure people know what's actually happening, and then how the players might see it, and then why the owners might see it in a different way. The thing I always try to bring is, I can see why the owners want X, Y, Z. I know why they want it. I can see why they want it. And then it's like, all right, well, I'm trying to give the player's opinion of ABC. And then find common ground or just talk about it. I can always talk about common ground, even no matter what I disagree with. And a lot of times it's more fun to play the devil's advocate and actually disagree with the topic and argue for it. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you my real opinion on it, and tell you how I feel about it. Yeah, we'll get into it. I like it.
Yeah, it's funny you say the devil's advocate thing, because this is a flaw of mine that I didn't realize was a flaw, but people have pointed out to me recently that I'm like, I always want to have the devil's advocate argument. I think it's like it sharpens the God's argument in this analogy, but it sharpens the other side of it if you have to argue against the devil's advocate on occasion. So
yeah, and it helps me find. I know where my argument's flawed. I can attack my own argument pretty well.
Sure. I was never on a debate team, but I always felt like I'd be okay at it because I'm willing to understand things from both sides. The one thing you didn't mention, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think fans. This feels like the first time in a long time the fans are having a hard time picking which side to be on. And that's, by the way, when I was growing up, 1994, they have the strike in 1994, and many sports work stoppages or threats of work stoppages over the years. And I feel like in the mid 90s and for several years after that, people really had a hard time putting themselves in the player's shoes and understanding that what I should relate to more is labor, not management. You know what I mean? Because that's what I am in my life. More of us are labor than management in our lives. And it felt like we kind of moved in that direction for a long time. And then this one, just the money's so big. And the Dodgers are such a beacon for what some people have identified as the problem, that I think people are shifting the other way. What's your perspective on what fans should be feeling right now?
Come on, man. Be with the players. Why you care about billionaires when the millionaires are complaining? No. I think a lot of times it's very hard to be on players' side because the owners control the media and they control what you hear and they control how you hear it. If a media person wants to work with the New York Yankees, they can't talk bad about the New York Yankees in certain ways. They can't sit there and just bash the ownership all the time and expect to be able to walk into a locker room or they then walk into a locker room. They can't necessarily get stopped, but they're not going to get a New York Yankee player on their show. Like WFAN is not going to get a bunch of Yankee players or a front office to ever work with them or talk with them if they're just bashing the front office 24/7. So there's always a line they have to walk, right? You can be careful with that. If they do bash them, they're going to work with a team that maybe will still work with them. But the players don't have those forums the same way. Like a player has to say it themselves. So it's a little bit different when you have a backing of $1 billion company. So you're going to hear a lot more from one perspective, and you're going to hear a whole lot more like these guys are greedy. They're constantly greedy. Look at this contract. Look how these players signed all with one team. That's so greedy. And the thing is that the owners are tend to be the faceless person behind the scenes. You can't put a finger on them, but you can see the player. They're the one there up front in front of the cameras 24/7. It was easy to hate Steinbrenner when Steinbrenner is behind the camera every single day, but these owners are not in front of the camera, so it's a faceless person, so it's easier to point at a finger at a player. But the way I always say this is like, why are you blaming the player for the contract the owners are offering? Why are you blame the worker for the owner saying, hey, this is a contract, we can afford this, sign it? And we go sit there and go, no, don't sign that contract. Take less money, less years, more sacrifice on your body, less working conditions, less food, less flight. Take everything and and make it worse for yourself because I want you to sign with this team. That's the right thing to do. It's easy to make that argument, and so it's easy to sit there and look at a player and say, Ohtani, you're the problem. You shouldn't have signed $70 million. You should have signed $35 million because my team wants you. Mm-hmm. Instead of going well, your team didn't do it. Well, they can't afford it. Well, we're seeing in these CBA arguments that they could afford it. They all could have afforded it. We're going to get into this a lot. We're going to talk about it, but I don't want to take one of your subjects up, one of your questions. The biggest problem with the entire CBA argument is the Dodgers and Major League Baseball. They're the problem. And the problem isn't necessarily the Dodgers, and the problem isn't necessarily Major League Baseball. The problem is that the Dodgers went through a bankruptcy, and because of their bankruptcy, they got really incredible deals to get out and get boosted because we need the Dodgers. Major League Baseball needs the Dodgers. Fans need the Dodgers. Players need the Dodgers. So we gave them great deals to get back on their feet and get going. But the Major League Baseball didn't negotiate with them correctly. They didn't say, all right, cool, once you're back on your feet, then we need to up these we need to take your TV deal instead of 30%, we need to bump that to 40 to 60 to get back to where it should be normally for every other team, what they're paying. They didn't do that. So the Dodgers now have just this crazy amount of income that other teams don't get. That their other teams are having to divvy out to other things and their other expenses. And so the Dodgers can sit back and say, oh, well, we have extra money. Cool, that other teams don't have. We can spend it. And then two, they were more creative in their negotiating with players than anybody else. They looked at the CBA and said, nothing's stopping us from paying Ohtani $2 million and then $70 million in 4 years. Why don't we just pay him 10 years? Why don't we just pay him $2 million now? Nobody else even thought of that. And no players were ever approached with it, right? Then we hate the Dodgers so much, but the Mets have a higher payroll. The Yankees, the Mets, they have a higher payroll. The Blue Jays are the 5th highest payroll, and they suck right now. The Mets are horrible right now. So it's not necessarily a money problem. Like now we look on the flip side and say like Cleveland has the lowest payroll, and are they in first place, second place, or whatever? Like the White Sox have the 25th payroll, and they're in first place, second place, whatever. Like the Rays, the best record in baseball, the 23rd payroll. Stop complaining about the Dodgers when these other teams are showing you how to do it. Sorry, I'm probably stole a ton of things we're going to talk about when we dive into it.
Totally. I actually agree with the point that it's not, the Dodgers aren't Major League Baseball's biggest problem, and if you're a fan of teams that are struggling, you shouldn't blame the Dodgers. I do, and as a fan of a team that spends not as much as I think they should, that's way more frustrating. The teams that are like the MLB owners have proposed this deal to the MLB Players Association, and my Mariners, my favorite team, they're spending under the minimum, and so to me, you go like
$5 million, right?
Yeah, but
it's middle like, reliever,
right. But it's like even then you're like if they had to spend up to this level every year, how much better would the last 25 years have been when they've barely been in the playoffs? Snuck in one year, obviously had the run last year, and the Mariners are like the 16th highest payroll in baseball. There's 15 teams spending or whatever. I'm like doing math in my head that 14 teams spending less than they should, or less than what would become the minimum cap. You bring up a good point, and I also think this is an interesting collective bargaining agreement.
2018, the Mariners spent $160 million, right? Like, I'm just throwing random numbers out there. 2013, 82. That's really low, right? Yeah. 2011, 100. Okay, those are low, but those probably at that time, 147 in 2016. Like, there's years they would have gotten in there, and they still would have sucked.
For sure.
You want to know a crazy thought? Sorry, I know I cut you off there, but crazy thought. I actually think the salary cap will keep the Mariners in the mediocre longer than anything else will ever help them. I actually think the only way a Rays, a Mariners, or a lot of these franchises even have opportunities to win is because there's not a salary cap. Salary caps institutionalize losing and winning. If you're a great team with a really good roster, and salary cap keeps those players on your team. A crappy team. Can I cuss on here?
Oh yeah, please do. You said actually, I listened to our last interview, and you asked that also then, and I was like, yeah, please cuss as much as you want. Don't.
A shit ass Pirates, a shit ass Rockies. They keep them at that spot. They can't improve because they don't have a free market to go out to go get a Juan Soto, a Shohei Ohtani. You can't. There is no free market anymore. That's why in football you don't see a whole ton of free agents. You don't see a lot of trades. You don't see a lot of moving of players. A raised system does not work with a salary cap because the Rays make all of their moves to bring in all these prospects, and they get rid of that player, but they bring in 5 every single time, and they're getting better on the aggregate constantly. Like there's a reason why in the NFL you've got losers and winners, and then a whole lot of mediocre. Like there's less Super Bowl champions in the NFL than there are in Major League Baseball, right? Less people who have never won. You've got less. People, I'm going to say this. I've screwed this all up. Major League Baseball has more parity. They have more teams in the middle with middle of the road records. If you look over the last 20 years, we can look at it and actually try to figure it out. And I've done this over 20 years or 25 years since 2000. The records for Major League Baseball, it's like you almost have 100%, or like the NFL, if you're looking at like the Cleveland Browns, the worst teams if you compare straight Major League Baseball and like NFL. I'm still screwing this all up. I'm so excited about it though. If you compare these things, like the bottom, and you compare winning percentage over 25 years, I get it. Major League Baseball has a ton more data, crazy amount. But like, what are you going to do? Like, this is what they do. They play 16 games. You got to figure this out. The worst records for like the NFL, there's like 8 teams before you get to the first baseball team. So there's like 8 teams, 8 franchises with 8 fan bases that believe in the salary cap and believe the salary cap is actually going to change their franchise and they're going to win every single year and the draft is going to change them. And will never have an opportunity, ever. And are constantly bad because of the system. You have these 8 teams. And then you get to the first bad baseball team. Who, by the way, doesn't matter what name it is, just throw it out there outside of Pirates. I've been to the World Series, and the Pirates got probably within a couple games of the World Series. So, like, you have teams in Major League Baseball, the worst, that are well better than any NFL franchise. And
can I summarize
have had
this
opportunities. Point? And the flip is the same, too. You have these 8 NFL teams with records that are far exceeding Major League Baseball in the last 25 years. Far. Crazy exceeding. Like 200 points higher. Like the best Major League Baseball team, like winning percentage in the last 25 years is like 560.
Sure.
You want to talk about parity? Again, the worst is like 440.
Yeah. Can I summarize your point in a way to make sure that I understand it correctly? Because when you first started saying it, I was going to probably just nod in agreement and then disagree silently. And I think you won me over by the end of it, which is the Pirates as an example, or the Mariners or the Rays. What they do is develop major league players and trade them off before they hit free agency and acquire more young talent and keeps the cycle going, right? At least the good versions of that. The Rays do a better job of that than the Mariners, which is obvious by their record and the fact that they've been to a World Series. The Mariners seem to be, I always say the Mariners are, there's a Mob Deep line, ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. The Mariners try to be halfway crooks all the time. They try to be a big market team on occasion, and they fuck themselves but out of all this, like, the small market opportunity they've created. Besides the point, your point is the Pirates, the Mariners, the Rays, they would have to spend up to the minimum, and because that's part of the cap, the upper limit also, they would have to basically spend to retain their own players instead of trading players away and accruing new, young, cheap talent. Yeah, that makes some sense to me. I've actually never heard that articulated that way.
That keeps you in these like holes, or keeps you in the winning, because you're just paying. What the Mariners would be doing is literally just paying their own roster to keep them, and they would stay mediocre. Like, okay, let's throw it out there. Let's say the worst. You know what? Like, this is argumentative. Like, the worst franchise in baseball is probably the Angels or the Rockies. Like,
sure,
you want to look over. The Angels brought in Albert Pujols, Anthony Rendon, like World Series champions, greatest hitter in Major League Baseball history. If you want to make a really good argument for Albert Pujols. They brought in Zach Greinke, Hall of Famer. They brought, Kenley Jansen. You can go up and down this list of players they've brought in. They develop talent. And Zach Neto, like Ohapi, like they have gone through and developed talent, some talent, brought in talent. They sucked. They're not good at baseball. When they walk in and put on an Angels uniform, they get better when they leave. Million different reasons. Rendon doesn't like baseball. You just paid the wrong money to the wrong guy. Albert Pujols, we all kind of saw the sign that he wasn't improving anymore. He was declining. I played there, and it was like Kendrys Morales, like Vladimir Guerrero, Howie Kendrick. Sat there up and down. The roster was Hall of Fame, borderline Hall of Famers. Like they all batted 300 or above in September one year. Like in 2009, like their batting average were averaging above 300 as a Major League Baseball team. God damn, that is, if they were in the Bronx, they would literally have a nickname for that team with how great they were. They brought in talent. They just are losing. But we sat there and go, well, they need a salary cap to be good. Like, are you kidding me? The Rockies are the only team I can look at and just say they haven't really gone for it. They signed one player in the last however many years, and Chris Bryant, and they just really haven't gone for it. They're the only team. Even the Pirates, like that young pitching staff, we looked at 2 years ago and said that might be the best young pitching staff in Major League history, like legit history, with like Skeens and these guys coming up. they're building something. They brought in some guys. They were competitive for a little bit, and right now they're not far off. The Pirates are so bad that they have a 480 winning percentage. We look at that as so horrible. In the NFL, you'd be like, oh, not a bad year. You're right in the middle. We look and go, no, dude, you're horrible. That's the problem. We have expectations that are different. I actually think, anyways, we're there. We're talking about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, you made the point earlier, but it's like talking about the NFL records is a little bit like talking about having a profitable year versus a profitable decade, right? It's literally that difference in games played. But I get your point, and I do think I think your point about the lower salary cap or like the limit. I'm trying to the floor, the salary floor. I keep saying, the salary floor makes some sense, and only that it's paired with a salary cap is why it's an argument. Because I would imagine for the players, salary floor is great, right? Because I believe, I don't know what the specifics of this most recent deal are, but I've seen minimum salaries suggested at $1.5 million. That's going to affect way more baseball players than, and I actually think that's, from my perspective, I suspect the owners will have a little bit of leverage, because when you go, the vast majority or a large portion of baseball players will almost double their salary. That's going to be a big contingent to get on board with this, like signing this deal. It'll be a lot of pressure, and the guys who would have made $70 million that are now going to make $45 million are a very small portion of the Players Association.
Yeah, and they're much larger at the bottom of those group, and remember that this is the trick with the Major League Baseball. They've done a really good job. That entire group doesn't know anything besides the salary cap, right? They when they get drafted, there's only a certain amount of money they can be paid. When in the minors, like everything's like capped at certain levels in the amount that you could go over, no one ever goes over, and so they've kind of lived with salary caps, like international draft as salary, international signings have kind of salary cap. We've introduced it with Japanese baseball, like now they're subject to this. Where before it was like, like you want to go sign a Daisuke, like go give them $100 million, go for it. Now it's like Daisuke, you can't make more than 25, like 2.5 million. Okay, so there's a lot of these things where you have an entire group of kids who've never known anything different, and it's worked for them. That's how you change. That's how you get the union to backpedal, is that this entire group has known nothing but kind of being restricted. So they're like, well, it's worked, and you know what? I'm here, so might as well keep kind of going. It's a slippery slope. The more you allow that, there's no way we're going to get a salary floor without some sort of cap or harder luxury tax. I think what's going to end up happening is you're just going to get a little bit firmer luxury tax. You're going to get some amendments to rules where players can't, prolong contracts the way we did it. And Bobby Bonilla was so crazy, and now you look at Shohei and you're like, dude, Bobby, like, you paved the way. Good job. And so you're going to get some of that. There's no way we're going to have a cap. There's no way we're going to have a cap. And when we have these conversations, when they say, oh, we can have a salary floor at 175, well, okay, so Cleveland, how are you going to pay for that? Because you told us you can't spend more than 70. Oh, now you're okay at 175? Where's the financial difference there? How is selling your franchises where the real value is? That doesn't make up for $100 million every single year.
Certainly I would expect there to be some revenue sharing negotiations where the wealthier teams give some money to the less wealthy teams to cover that gap as part of this deal, right? And I'm sure the owners have that worked out on their side. I think the owners work in lockstep a lot better than whatever it is, like God, how many players are in baseball now? Like 1,000?
Well,
no, it's like about 750.
I thought it'd be about 1,600, because I believe it's how many players? That's a great question. Well, it'd be 20.
This math's pretty easy. We could do. Well, it's got to be like 750 in the big leagues.
Like, do you count the 40
on that'd be 1,200, and then like high minors, guys that are like on the verge. Yeah, you're 1,600 total. I guess that affects all of them. But yeah, even exacerbates my point, which is that's a lot more guys to try to get to unite on something. Why is the Major League Baseball Players Union so much stronger than these other sports?
First one, that always helps, right? Marvin Miller. This man is the man. He walked into it without a mindset of, I think a lot of the other sports came into it and said, okay, like we're just going to try to help the players. Marvin Miller came in with an idea of what it's like being in other big unions and saying, no, there's a line. We have to hold it and hold and hold and hold. It took a lot of work, and a lot of players sacrificing some of their careers and literally having to walk away from Major League Baseball because they they stood with Marvin Miller and the union and put their line in the sand. And because of those players that were unwilling to move early, like really early, it was very easy to tell players later on. I think the one thing too, this is some generalizations here, so don't bury me on this one. Like, please, people out there, don't bury me. Anyone from other sports, the players at the very beginning incredibly respected what it meant to be a veteran, and were not just allowed to get in. The players, when you got in Major League Baseball, you stayed in Major League Baseball for a long time. So to get that foot in the door was a huge deal, and the veterans made you know it, and then taught you what it meant to be Major League Baseball before you could, like, you weren't right. You're not above the team. The team is the most important thing. So they taught you what it meant to be a Major League Baseball player. And then over time, we had a bunch of players that were not selfish and a bunch of players that didn't treat like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Again, that was taught and bred into baseball. Like, you are not bigger than this. I mean, we would be told that all the time. I was told it even in 2000s. I can't imagine what it's like in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then when you have some of these big labor negotiations, in the 80s and then the big 94, where you really got to put your back to the wall, you had a bunch of players that were bred into a system saying that you are not bigger than the game and you are not bigger than the player coming up behind you, and Marvin Miller, and then you got Donald Fuhrer, Michael Weiner, and these guys are just shoving it down your throat of like what people did in the past. And once you have that strength, like, that's a beautiful part of it too. Once you have the strength, then you know how to wield it, and you just don't give it up. Like, why give up this strength? Why? Donald Fuhrer, the best thing that ever happened to Major League Baseball is Donald Fuhrer for players. Was him being able to walk up. He was a dick. People hated him. I'm totally okay with people hating him for striking. The same time though, that he saved Major League Baseball by just saying no, like that, like, fuck you, owners. And then it pissed a lot of people off, rubbed them the wrong way. Then you sat back right after that, and you had the greatest thing that ever happened, which was McGuire and Sosa, Bonds coming, Griffey's high years right after the strike, and then you had these superstar Yankee teams. And Major League Baseball starts rolling, and then it's like, all right, we don't want to screw with this, so we never had a huge labor problem. So I actually feel bad. Rob Manfred has one of the hardest jobs in sports. When I was on the union and I was in the negotiating committee, so I sat down for some of the negotiations. It was the easiest thing in the world because, like, we didn't want to strike. They didn't want to hold us out. Like, walk out. Everyone's making money. His job, though, is to get 30 owners on the same page. You understand, Major League Baseball is really easy on the union side. We've got 1,200 players that all want the same thing. We just want to put some money in our pocket, be healthy, help the players behind us, and have a free system. That's it. We just want Major League Baseball to flow. And we want to win. Michael Weiner, I had a great conversation with him once over lunch, and he said his job is to not negotiate for the players. His job is to negotiate for the owners. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, we're here to not let the owners get in their own way. We want Major League Baseball to survive and be great, and then we just want health benefits, retirement benefits. That's how Major League Baseball got started, the union got started, and then we don't want no salary cap. That's it. That's all we walk to the table with, and everything else is open and saying, let's just help Major League Baseball. And he goes, my job is with Rob Manfred, it's just to help him. He goes, because he's got Reinsdorf and his little group over here. Then you got Artie Moreno and his group over here, and I'm just saying names. And then you got the Steinbrenners up here. Then you got these guys, and they all have 4 teams that are all in their same boat that think like that. He goes, Manfred is like just trying to thread the needle between them all and try to get them all to like the same thing. I promise you, there are owners that don't want a salary cap. I promise you. There's owners that don't want a floor. There's owners that want a complete free system. There's owners who want completely all this way. There's a huge spectrum. His job is to find a spot for them all to be happy. They won't be. So our job as a union is to try to help them negotiate those conversations with owners. And at the same time to say, these are these lines. How do you talk to their owners about it? And try to get through that. And so it's always a really fun thing to try to figure out. Obviously, when you get to some angry spots about a salary cap and you start pushing it, those conversations become a little bit more heated and not as fun. But that's really the union's job, is just to not let the owners get in their own way. So we have Major League Baseball.
I have one more union or CBA related question, and then I have one question that's not related to it, but I want to be cognizant of your time. How do you explain so for fans, this feels like there's no win. And I say that not because the win is baseball's still around, but it sounds like to me, no matter what happens, as a fan, prices are going up in my city. The cost of a ticket's going up. And that might not be completely true. There's revenue sharing and stuff that I'm sure is negotiated into the owner's side of this that we're probably never going to know about until it actually comes around, right? Because the stuff seems to be leaking all from the owner's side right now. So we'll never know about what disagreements were had along that way, right? But what do you say to fans who go, now my team has to spend twice as much money. Why aren't they going to increase tickets by 100% to cover that difference?
So there's a couple different things, and this is just going to be the reality of it, and this sucks. And trust me, I don't want prices to go up. Prices are going to go up. Okay, here's the core basics of it. One, you have a city, and so let's just say the city of Seattle's population, while you're talking, I pulled it up at 792,900. Okay. Growth rate's 1% every single year. You're talking like 784 the year before, right? That's just standard, 1.5 to 1% every year. How many more seats in T-Mobile Ballpark are we putting in every year? 0.
Right.
So you have the same amount of seats. Revenues go up, just like your salary should go up every year. Like everybody's salary, you want to increase every single year. Their salary's going up, your expenses are going up, your costs are going up, population's getting more, so you have more demand for the same product. And then we sit there and say seats shouldn't get more expensive. But back when I go back to my job at Microsoft, I want my salary to go up. Mm-hmm. It should go up every year, man. I hit my bonus. I should get my bonus, right? And players don't make more money. Do not make, so if there's a spot there where we say, well, my entertainment cost shouldn't go up, but everything else is. And I've got more people with more money competing for the same ticket. It sucks, but it's going to go up. Now, again, I don't think that's reasonable in some situations. They're not. Ticket prices are not going up 1%. Some jumps are 10% every single year. Or right. I'm hearing about the Bills. They doubled season ticket prices, or quadrupled them, or doubled it, and you get worse seats. Stuff like that. That's not fair. That's not right. But again, it's demand, versus supply. I tell fans, like, it's hard. I don't like it. I want to go to a ballpark. I want to go to a game here. Move to Arizona and come down to a game. So I went to a game for $20 with my kids, and I sat in the bottom section at a great game. There's plenty of seats down here. So I'm going to a good team. It's hard. I don't have any. There's no ill will against it, but man, this part of it's going to be that's what's always going to happen. It's going to go more expensive. It's going to be more expensive to go to a ballpark. As long as people keep buying tickets and keep going and keep filling Dodger Stadium and filling T-Mobile. I went last year. That was one of the coolest experiences I've ever been around. I never was there and experienced that as a Mariner, and I wish I did, because that was special.
Oh, you went during the playoffs?
I went during the year. I went Ichiro's number retirement.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The Hall of Fame announcement ceremony, and that was the best environment I had ever seen in a Major League Baseball game. The second best environment I had ever seen was in San Diego on July 4th. Oh, my God, it was incredible. And then after that, you have to go to Wrigley on a great day, or Boston, in the playoff run when I was there, or Yankees on a playoff run when I was there. But it sucks. I want to say something better, but prices are going to go up no matter what. It just is. Right. It's just how it is. It's just let's have good owners who are clear about the economics of the team, that want to help out fans. Like, everybody hates Artie Moreno for losing. he's really clear, man. He hasn't raised prices with like concessions in years and years and years. Hasn't raised ticket prices or parking prices, like trying to keep ticket prices down, like really trying to do his best. Because we have a friend who's very close to him, and he talks about it all the time. He's like, dude, I haven't raised like concession prices like above a certain amount in like 10 years. Like trying to keep this family friendly as much as I can while running. Team prices are going to go up, and if you have a salary cap, guys, guess what? Prices just went up.
Yeah.
You know, like every one of your ballparks, prices are going to go up. Don't think they're not. And owners, when they tell you this is about the fans, yeah, okay, it's about the fans.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of the problem that fans have right now is they feel like they have kind of nobody to root for, because if the players win, the prices go up. And I think most of us are clued in at this point that the owners aren't on our side either. All right, I have another topic that could be its own podcast, but I don't want to have to bother you every couple months for stuff like this. So there's all this discourse right now about velocity compared to the 80s and 90s, and how Nolan Ryan must have been throwing 128 miles an hour because they measured it at a different point, and all this stuff. And I want to hear from you're a guy that threw high 90s, low triple figures. You run a performance institute. You played kind of not necessarily across both eras, but you certainly played from the beginning of these like TrackMan days into, deep into the end of them. And there's a true thing that happened. They started measuring velocity differently. They measured it out of the hand instead of kind of at a nebulous point between the pitcher and home plate. But explain, I might argue more about this than I do about the CBA, to be honest with you. But I want to hear your opinion on this discourse that's happened in the last several years, or the last several months, I feel like.
Yeah, people are jumping all over it. One, when they show the whole Nolan Ryan, Bob Feller, who was it, the Bob Feller one where they show him like through like glass, like this winter.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Or was it Walter Johnson?
I've seen the frame rate comparison where I'm like, these I know enough about video. These are in different frame rates. Like
that's the big one for me, is like it's not hard to figure out frame rate for a video. Like we all know the frame rate. It'd be really easy to determine a release point to that. We can do it, but they're not doing it for some reason. Did Nolan Ryan throw hard? Fuck yes. Nolan Ryan threw goddamn cheese. Did I think Nolan Ryan threw 108? God, no. Not even remotely close. Do I think Nolan Ryan was probably steadily touching 100 at times? Probably yes. Do I think Bob Seaver could have been? Absolutely. Do I think I don't think Colfax was on that same velo plane. Do I watch Bob Gibson and think that 6'5" beast would have worked in Major League Baseball? Oh, yes. He was a giant, massive, strong man. So what we got to do, think about a couple things. One, were there strong, big men that threw hard? Let's just see this. Were there strong, big, athletic men in every generation? Absolutely. Was there Bob Gibsons? Yes. The big train. Walter Johnson. Was there? Cy Young was probably a dude. When we go up and down the list, then we get to all right, the 80s and 90s, where we're actually really starting to measure these things, and we're starting to look at Randy Johnson, Pedro. We look at Roger Clemens. We're looking at up and down these lists of guys. Dudes threw hard, they've always thrown hard. The biggest difference is that every guy throws hard now. Like the dude in high school training throws hard. The guy in college who's now hitting maturity throws hard. Where before, that wasn't the case. You had the peaks. You had the top dogs. The top dogs have always existed. Just watch their movements. Watch their biomechanics. Watch how they get in their legs. Watch how they move down the mound. There is a big difference. Happened in the 50s, where mechanics got a lot different and started getting really good. When before that, you see how guys stop and finish with their chest up. None of those guys ever threw hard. They could have thrown hard. Now I understand, give them training, give them time, give them today's technology, food, whatever. They would be 100-mile-an-hour throwers without a doubt. But watch Bob Gibson's delivery and say, tell me that wouldn't work. Tell me that dude 6'5", moving like that down the mound, angry chest out, and then conyo finish and like shoving it up your grill, that dude threw gas. Do we have any way of measuring it even close to now? No. The problem was jugs back then, the old school jugs, box. They had a box and a cord and measured it at the plate. So the key was, though, and this is what we are always told, if you hit 90 on that thing, you were a beast. You were throwing 95, 97. We knew at the time where it measured. It measured at the plate or measured it out of your hand, and then the numbers would click back, boom, and then give you the real number, which was what is the velocity at the plate. Scouts also knew that compared to everybody else. So if it said 83 and the next dude's 85, that guy is throwing much harder than the other guy. If it was 83 or 85, then the next dude's popping an 87 on there, that guy's bringing goddamn Major League Baseball fuel in whatever level he is. And then came out, that was the old school jugs, and then we came out with it was a red and black radar gun that got it like at release. People would call that the cheating machine. Like they'd be like, no, dude, that's cheating. Like you can't say you're throwing 90 on that gun because everyone else is compared to the other gun. But if you threw 90 on that, you also knew it was at release. You knew that was where it was coming from. So when you can measure these things, we knew how to measure. We knew it was different. But I'll say this: when I came into the league and when I would step on that mound, there were dudes all around me throwing 98, 99. But like the average guy was 92. I walk out there. I can still throw 92 today. And I walk out and I play catch with guys. I'm like, the average, just walk in the door guy is like throwing a slider at 92. And I see it and I watch it, I measure it, I'm like looking at it. I can take old school things and it's still going to say 92. And he's saying it's a slider. It's freaking moving. I'm like, dude, that's insane. So, yeah, we're measuring it different. But I also sit there and go, okay, cool. Like, we can also look at it and see what would that be crossing the plate. Like, we have that technology. Like, it's a big, I know it's a huge ass conversation. We talk all about it. Every single guy walking in is throwing way harder now. It was very easy. It was very normal to have a lefty that was throwing 88 on your team. Like, and would get, his only job was to throw slide. Understand though, he wasn't throwing fastballs. He was throwing sliders and then like sneak in a fastball. Like they still hit it, but like if you threw 94, you were getting an opportunity. You throw 94 now, it's like, all right, that's cool. What's your spin rate? What's this? What's that? You know, like how do you compete? Can you get outs at 94? It was real legit. So I watch these guys. I watch it progress. The difference is we think like everything's so different. Like watch lifting and training and athleticism. These guys are men it's insane. How much they're training, how big they are, how physical they are. It's not being 6'3" and walking in the door now is like, okay, nice. You're that's cute. That's average. You know,
that's true. I mean, you've finished a protein shake on this podcast, and we used to have guys pouring eggs into a glass, and that was their like workout drink, drinking raw eggs, right? Like we've learned a lot more about nutrition and training and technology. And the other thing about it that bugs me is this stuff has existed for 15, almost 20 years at this point, and we've seen in that time on this new measure the velocity has gone up and the consistency of velocity has increased. Like the cluster of players that are throwing 98 plus is larger than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's like, I thank you for saying all this because it seems undeniable to me.
There wasn't many teams in my entire life that there was anybody on the team that threw harder than me. I remember I went to the Cubs in 2006 and Will Ullman was the hardest thrower on that team. And, you know, at the time, Kerry Wood had already kind of had his peak. Mark Pryor had already had his thing, and Zambrano was good, but Zambrano was 93, 95. And I was coming in every pitch 96 plus. And Will Ullman was pissed because he's like, dude, you throw harder than me, man. I was the hardest thrower. And I was like a 96, 98 guy who touched 100. And then now, like, legitimately, I'm watching guys train and I'm standing next to them, like, competing with them. And I'm like, I can't do what you're doing on every single throw. Like, Fernando Rodney came in. It was insane. We had guys throw 100. There has been guys that threw 100 forever. It's just now it's normal. Now you watch the fans, they're like, yeah, that's normal. We think it's the gun is different. I might give you a mile per hour from when I first came in, maybe 1.5. But like I was 102. I hit 102. But my average was probably 97, 96. Those guys are walking in averaging 100. Like that would have been a cool 99. It would have been insane. Like big. I always say there's two things that really changed. Well, three things. Let's go three things. One, steroids changed Major League Baseball history, and the fact that we learned what training does to your body and how you can perform better. And so when we got rid of steroids, we had a whole new generation that said, we kept the gym. We got rid of the steroids, kept the gym. So you had a whole new generation come in and said, let's go, let's train. Pitchers became athletes. 2, Billy Wagner. 3, Justin Verlander. Those like they are Hall of Famers. They should be in a different level. They changed Major League Baseball forever. Billy Wagner showed what it meant to throw hard and to get strikeouts as a reliever. So then everybody wanted to do that. Justin Verlander showed everybody what you could do as a starter. It was just different. 92 to start the game, 98 to finish it, every single day. So those guys don't get enough credit for what they did to Major League history. And then now everyone after them benefited from what they did. Nolan Ryan, everyone thought was a freak. Justin Verlander came in and showed you could do it.
Yeah, Justin Verlander is like Nolan Ryan with control and command and great breaking pitches and great other off speed. Yeah, great point.
Yeah. And less attitude, more stuff, more pitch, less attitude, more pitchability.